In this video, I want to say more about different variable data types. I'm going to store some details about a car. Let's start with a new button on the form. Give it a name and change the text property. Double-clicking will allow me to write the code. Okay, so I'm going to start with a couple of string variables to store the make and the model. We've come across string variables already. Let's assign some values. A Ford Escort, a classic car. I also want to store the number of doors that this car has. This time I'm using a data type of integer. An integer is just another name for a whole number. Notice the naming convention I'm using, I doors, I for integer. I want to store the colour of the car. This is going to be another string variable. I want to store some information about whether or not this car has been taxed. This time I'm using a data type of Boolean, named after the computer scientist George Boole. A Boolean variable can have one of two values, true or false. This car has been taxed. Boolean variables are good when you have yes/no type data, for example whether somebody is a vegetarian or not, whether something is switched on or something is switched off. I also want to store the engine size. Another integer, 1200 cc. I'd like to store the price of this car. I'm using a data type of decimal. Decimal is the most suitable data type when you want to store money values. I could have used double and I could have used single because all three data types, decimal, double, single, allow me to have a decimal point with decimal places after it. But double is twice as accurate as single. I can have more decimal places. And the data type decimal is the most accurate of them all, which makes sense when you're doing calculations with money. The final thing I want to store is the date that the car was registered, so I'm going to use a data type of date. There's a special way that I have to assign a value to a date variable. Notice I'm using the hash symbols to enclose the date. I should also point out that this is not the 11th of February, but the 2nd of November. When you type a date, you need to type it in American format, which is the month followed by the day followed by the year. When I display this on the screen, for example in a message box, it'll be displayed according to the settings in my computer's control panel. You'll see in a moment that my computer is set up to display dates in British format. Now let's build a MessageBox command to display all of this data. Notice the concatenation operators between the variable names, and notice also that I'm concatenating spaces between these data items. Now you can see I have a bit of a problem here with reading the code I've written on the screen. Nevertheless, let's test it and see if it runs. There's my message and it looks okay. Notice that the day and the month of the date are the other way round from the way I coded it. I've written the date in American format, but it's being displayed in British format. What I'd really like to be able to do is display each data item on a separate line within the same message box. Let's see how to do that. Instead of concatenating spaces in between each data item, I'm going to type a special constant. I'll say more about constants later. Suffice to say, I'm just going to type vbNewLine. And I'll replace each space with this. Let's just copy and paste it. Control C to copy, Control V to paste. I still need the same number of concatenation operators to join all these different bits and pieces together. Let's see how it looks now. Well, that is certainly a nicer message. But now I want to do something about the problem that I can't actually read the whole line of code. I could give myself some more space on the screen by just dragging this bar across a little bit, but even then I can't read the whole line of code. I essentially want to wrap this text on the screen. Well, I can do this. After the ampersand here, in fact I can put this pretty much anywhere, I'm just going to leave a space and then type an underscore character. When I press enter, I've moved the rest of the line onto the next line down. I can do that again here. Notice the underscore characters have actually disappeared, but this is still just one line of code. It won't change the appearance of the message box, but it just allows me to read the code more easily on the screen. Let's make sure it still works. Yep, that's absolutely fine. In the next video, I'll show you how we can capture input from the user of an application so we can assign the contents of these variables at runtime rather than hard coding the data like we've done here.